My name is Paul Culp. I'm the sub-dean for the Columbus chapter of the American Guild of Organists. It is my pleasure to be here in St. Luke United Methodist Church today with Ken Bailey, the organist at St. Luke. And we're going to talk about this 1948 Moller, marvelous instrument that has served this church so well, and what's been done specifically to the organ in the last couple of years to bring it back to where it belongs. And we'll talk more about that. But I'm delighted to be here to present to you the very first virtual organ crawl. Just for the record, we won't be crawling a lot today. I think that at my age especially, not going to be crawling anymore intentionally. And so we're just here to spend a little time, hang out together, and talk to you about this organ. And we hope that you're going to enjoy this program and that it'll be entertaining to you and informational as well. So let's start out with saying hello to Ken.
Hello.
And thanking him for being willing to do this with us. And Ken, most of us, or a lot of us, are very familiar with this organ, and at one time or another have played either weddings or funerals or what have you here. And so we're all somewhat familiar with this instrument, but particularly in the past couple of years, you've helped to do a lot that has stabilized this instrument. And I want you to talk a little bit about that to get us started, if you would.
Okay, well, what we've done is there are various things, really mostly in the console, that were giving us some problems. There were ciphers taking place in the organ, some of that kind of thing. So we isolated what they were. We found out the ciphers were mostly caused because the screws in the bottom boards of the wind chests had gotten loose and letting air seep out, which caused wonky problems with all the air pressures that go on. And so that caused the ciphers. So we tightened the bottom boards up, and the ciphers have largely disappeared. And then there were some pistons here and there on the console that didn't respond, so we had the pistons changed. We did have one time where all of a sudden we kept getting a whole cluster of pedal notes which would just come on in the middle of the prayer time while the choir is singing the anthem, in the middle of the sermon. It didn't matter. It would just start playing all these low notes. Well, there's these control cards and all that go up in, they fit in these slots up there, and they just said, well, one of the cards has gone bad. So they located which card had gone bad, changed it out, no more problems. And so we pretty well addressed all of the little quirky, strange little things that were going on. The swell shades are operating properly now. I did find out that the contacts in the pedal down here are made of copper, and all you have to do is look at the Statue of Liberty to see that copper likes to tarnish really quickly. So I'm down there with my little emery cloth that I use. Let's see if I can find it. I have this little piece of emery cloth that I use, and when the swell shades don't work right, I just get down there and I just rub that on the contacts a little bit. So now the swell shades work right, everything works right. The last thing that took place was a combination action was going off and then coming back on. And then it got to where it would go off for a few days and then come back on, then a few weeks, and then it just finally went off and didn't come back on, which was perfect because then we could send it to Peterson and they could find what was wrong with it. And they did, and have repaired it and put it in, which erased all of the memory levels. So if you had memory levels in the organ, they are now gone to organist memory level heaven. And so if you play for a wedding, just know you'll have to come in and get new memory levels. But everything is working. It's all working the way it's supposed to, and so that's very nice.
And we also know, or some of us know, that you made some tonal changes. Talk to us about those.
We did. We made some tonal changes. The organ, if you look on the Organ Historical Society database, there's two stop lists. There's the original one, and then in the 80s there were some tonal changes, and as part of that, the original 2-foot principal on the grate was replaced with a 2-foot block flute which made fixing a registration a little bit odd to get a full principal chorus at times, because the 2-foot principal was then over here on the swell. And the only way to get 8/4 and 2 principal sound is to couple. But see, like I have some pieces where maybe you want something with a trumpet fanfare, and then you've got to go down and play a nice big principal chorus on the grate. Well, you couldn't really do that without a pause for a piston press, because everything was kind of spread around. So we put a 2-foot principal back on the grate on its original chest. And then I kind of felt like that we're a little bit top heavy for some of the material that I like to play. And the organ, you know, could have stood to have a little bit more foundation. So I got the idea that over here where they had the principal 4 and 2, we could replace that with an 8-foot rank, which would play principal 8 and 4, because we'd have the 2-foot over on the grate where we put it back on its original chest. Well, as it turns out, although I had asked all the questions I felt like I needed to ask about scale and wind pressure and all this kind of stuff, as it turns out, when they actually came to swap the ranks out, the scale of the big 8-foot Geigen diapason that I acquired for this purpose was too big in diameter to fit on the row of the wind chest that I had hoped to use it for. And the fella that was doing the pipe work for us mentioned, he said, well, look here, and he showed me where it was written on some of the wind chests. He says, originally, that part of the wind chest was for the solicinal. And that's why all the holes are closer together, because the solicinal is a thinner pipe. And it got moved to actually the chest where this diapason would have been to begin with. So that's what we did. We put the solicinal back on its original chest to put the 8-foot here. That means that I don't have a 4-foot principal on the swell right now, but I do have one in a box sitting in the floor of the chamber up there. So at some point it can be added back in. But one added benefit was that in all of the moving in 1985, the solicinal, which is the tuned rank, was sitting right up at the front of the chamber, and then the celesting rank was behind it, which, you know, you still had a celeste. It sounded really nice. But when they did this change, the solicinal then is now sitting behind the celesting rank, and the effect is really, really nice. I mean, the strings on this organ now just sound fabulous. I mean, they sounded nice before, but now there's just, you can tell. You come in and play it, just feel free, come in and play it. Grab the solicinal and the Vox Celeste and just play a little bit, and you will hear what I'm talking about. It's a gorgeous sound. And we do have more bottom with the Geigen diapason 8 over here to play, coupled with the great, you know, with the 8-foot diapason. We now have 2 8-foot diapasons on the organ, which is a nice, warm foundation sound. I just think it sounds great.
And so instead of a 2-foot flute, you now have a 2-foot principal to build that principal chorus
on the grate.
And they're all in the same location.
They are. Yeah. They are. They speak better together. They stay in tune better together because they're all, you know, in a row. It's interesting. I realized that's how it was. I was looking up in the chambers, and on that part of the chest, there's big stamped into the wood 15th, and I was like, okay, well then we're supposed to have a 2-foot principal right here, not a block flute. And so now, yeah. So here's the 8-foot principal, and then the 4, and then add the 2. So now we have a nice. Nice full principal chorus on the grate, and then if we couple the new Geigen diapason, which is right here, with it, it has a much warmer, lots of nice bottom to it. And then if I put the swell to grate 4-foot coupler, I can still get 8 and 4. the swell, even though, you know, if I'm going to add other stuff, of course I wouldn't do that. But there we go. So that makes the principal choruses very nice on this organ. I think it's got a really lovely sound.
So the principal chorus is the voice that is unique to the organ.
Yes.
No, it cannot be found in any orchestral instrument. But let's talk about the other voices for a second, which can be found in the orchestra. And the strings on this organ, I know you're certainly excited about, and with good reason. Let us hear some of those strings.
Okay, here is the solicinal vox celeste on the swell. And then here is the dulciana and the undamaris on the choir. And then if we couple them together, it's very lovely. And then, because the solicinal is now sitting on a part of the wind chest that will play in 2 octaves, 8 foot and 4, then we get a little bit extra. Let me couple these here. And it gets this really pretty, ethereal kind of sound. And then I have a couple of registrations that I use. Let's see, let's go to here. That was the strings with a few other things in there too.
Good.
Now, one of the other imitative stops is the concert flute. I love the concert flute on this organ because it actually sounds like a flute. Which in organ, you know, we have principals, flutes, strings, and reeds. So a lot of the flutes, you know, they have their own organ kind of sound, which is different than just, you know, an actual flute that you hear somebody play. But we have a concert flute.
Now, is that an open flute?
It's, I believe it's a closed flute, where I think there is a cap on the top. I can't remember. I'll have to go up there and look at it.
But it's a metal, not a wood.
No, it's a wood.
Okay.
The concert flute, it's a wood flute. The pipes are made of wood. And I believe it's stopped, which means it has a cap on the top of it. I believe so, but I believe it's a stopped flute. It may be open. We'll have to find out. They're both. These are all open. The bottom octave is stopped because the cap on the top drops the pitch an octave.
Okay, well, so the strings are certainly useful for accompaniment voices. What about the solo voices? What do you have here that we can show our listeners?
My favorite stop on the organ is the English horn, which our music director, he's an oboist, says is neither English or a horn, but that's okay. It's a beautiful solo stop. Isn't that lovely? It's lovely. And so if we put, like some strings with it, then we can get a really, really nice, let's see.
Beautiful.
It's lovely. It's lovely. So we have that stop. Then, of course, we have the oboe on the swell. And then we have the trumpet.
That's a trumpet.
That's a trumpet. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice and good and fat. And I have a Percy Fletcher, or Whitlock, excuse me, wrong name, Percy Whitlock piece that I use. Actually, I use the oboe and the trumpet and our clarion, which is actually the same trumpet the same rank as the trumpet, just playing an octave higher. So we don't have a separate clarion rank. It's the trumpet just playing an octave higher. But I use it, and it kind of fattens it all up really well, especially if I'm going to, you know, play kind of big. So it gets a nice... You know, and then you can go in. So we got a nice set of reeds. Now, one really popular reed that I know you're all waiting to hear.
Dying to hear.
Yes, because everybody is aware of it all around the Columbus areas. We have this gorgeous pedal trombone. Well, let's see if it's going to play. I have to adjust it. There it goes. There it goes. It needs a little bit of adjustment. But there is the trombone. It is a full 32 pipe pedal rank. It's not borrowed from other parts of the organ. It's just its own rank right there. The Borden on the great side is actually, it's a 44 pipe rank that plays at the 16 foot and 8 foot level. And it's the one that, I don't know if you can pick it up on the video. Oh, and there it is with the trombone. But here it is. This is the one that makes the walls vibrate.
Yeah, that's where elephants hear down there.
That's it. That's it. Yes. And then, of course, you know, then we have a diapason, 16 foot. It's actually an octave that then connects to the 8 foot diapason on the great. But then the 8 foot octave and the 4 foot super octave is a rank all by themselves. So then I guess you get a little bit of variation in the color of the sound of the pedal. It's not just all coming from one rank. And then we have a mixture. This stop says mixture 4, but it's actually a mixture 2. It's a gross sesquilterra. Which, you know, is 2, and it's actually sitting on the chest that used to have the vox humana. The organ used to have a vox humana on it, and in the 1985 revisions, then that chest was moved over to the great chamber from the Swell and rewired, so it has the pedal mixture on it. And another thing that was added was a sesquilterra on the great, so that we have okay, that's the 8 foot Borden, which is on the great, and the sesquilterra, and it works great for Baroque, you know, Renaissance music, to get that little oinky sound that's supposed to go along. And then we have a 5 rank mixture on the great, which is very robust. And really adding that 2 foot 15th back onto the principal chorus on the great really kind of tames this mixture, because it's a big, loud mixture. And when it was the color of sound instead of principal was a 2 foot flute kind of sound, it didn't mix very well with the rest of the principal chorus. But now having that 2 foot 15th actually in place.
There would have been a hole.
There was a hole.
Where that 2 foot sound
there was
missing.
Yeah, it was like an empty spot. And even using the 2 foot over here, which was actually a Geigen diapason rank at the 4 foot level, which is a little lighter textured anyway, you know, having it coupled, it still didn't fill the gap harmonically in there to get like a whole full sound. You know, now it kind of has, you have the whole spectrum of sound all the way up to the top. So that's really nice too. I use it more like when I have the organ like big with a lot of reeds and full, because I have a mixture on the Swell that's a little bit more tame, so it doesn't, you know, punch out there quite as hard as what this one does. But it's great for when you have like a larger registration. Whoop, sorry. so I don't know if we had anything that was not quite as robust, we wouldn't have a top on everything, so you got to have it for those times when you need it.
That's absolutely the truth. Okay, so another interesting story, or at least interesting to me, is that the problem with the shade, the swell shades.
Yes.
So tell us the history of what was happening with the swell shades and what you discovered.
Well, originally, you know, they were pneumatic swell shade motors, which are air-driven, and when Adlin and Doyle were still here, they replaced those with electric motors, and what I noticed when I got here, well, you know, they weren't working, and it's because the contacts in the pedals just needed to be cleaned, and that got them working. But then I noticed when I would try to raise and lower, you know, and taper the volume, instead of getting a nice even crescendo, it kind of go, and it's because the contacts in the pedal, there are 10 little fingers down there that contact this metal bar. Okay, but there's only 8 on the motors up in the top. So the way they were wired is that one set of shades, there's 2 columns of shades up there, and so what would happen is that one column would open a little bit, and then the other column would open a little bit, and then this column would open a little bit, and then that would open, and that took up the extra contacts that are in the pedal that they didn't have room for on the motors, and then they all opened up. So when you were soft, you tried to you know, swell a little bit, you know, if you played it, it would kind of go.
Not really able to control
it didn't really, yeah,
the rate of increase in volume.
So I just took all the wires loose and I changed it around so that they just have, we have the top 2 contacts on the pedals, don't do anything. 1 through 8 are wired in to 1 through 8 on the motors, and the little distances are all set so they open nice and smoothly, and then they close. Of course, if you come to play and they don't open nice and smoothly, it's because the copper in the contacts is corroded again, and so we'll just like clean it up a little bit, and then they'll work very nicely. Let's see, let me go to here so you can hear. I'm pushing both of them at the same time.
That's what's supposed to happen.
That's what's supposed to happen. Yes, and it's happening. It's happening. So it's great.
That's wonderful.
It's great.
Well, you're going to share some pieces with us.
I am. This is Fanfare by Percy Whitlock. Let me open all my pages up because I have all my page turns copied and all that kind of thing. And it's one of those examples where there's a part where the voices overlap. So you have the principal and the big full principal, and then the trumpets come in on top. So having the 2-foot on the grate then gives you that big principal chorus, because, you know, I can only have the reeds on the swell to have the solo trumpet kind of sound, because this organ doesn't have a festival trumpet tuba type big thing. So I just kind of am making one up right there.
Okay.
And so let's see what happens.
Yes, absolutely.
we're going to take just a moment and let me put on my organ playing glasses.
Bravo.
Okay, moving on.
Bravo, what a wonderful piece.
I like it. I like it.
Are you going to share something a little softer with
I
us?
can, yeah, I can share something a little softer. Let's see, I'll have to find something softer to share.
You don't like soft, do you?
Well, I do, because it contrasts nicely with the loud.
That's right.
Let's see, what do I have? Now, here's Pachelbel's Canon in D. I'm playing it for a wedding this weekend. I do it with all the strings on. I mean, I know it's Baroque, but it's a string piece.
Yeah.
So I just do it with all the strings on. And, I like it that way. And I think, people who hear it, for weddings and all, they like it. So here are the strings that I love so much. So with a little bit of extra, we have the Borden and the Koppel flute on the grate to give just a little body. And then we have the Gemshorn, which is also a string stop that does not have a celesting rank to go with it, right here. A little nice kind of light sound. And the concert flute is on. And then, of course, the Borden with the deep rumbly bass and all that is on. Because this is like what I call my more full string setting. Which one thing I'm going to do, I think there's a way I can set a lock inside the combination action. It doesn't have one out here. I think there's a way you can do it. So I'm going to take General 1, the memory bank number 1, and set, Adeline suggested we do this, I love it, is set a whole set of registrations going from very soft to very loud. So that if anybody comes to play for a wedding, you don't have time to get in here, and set a bunch of registrations for things, then you can just kind of familiarize yourself with it. You kind of have at least something to kind of work with. So what I have is I have number 1, I have the trumpet. So if you're doing the trumpet voluntary, let's see. Okay, so I have the trumpet soloed out here, and then I just have the concert flute, 4-foot harmonic flute and piccolo on the choir, just as an accompaniment, for the. Okay, and then when you get to then the principal 8, 4, and 2 and all is on the grate.
Most of us never get that far.
Well, I know. She's down the aisle by then. But if they happen to use it for like the seating of the mothers or the wedding party, you might be able to get one time around on that one. And then I have number 2. I have set up with the English horn. And then what I did is we have this 16-foot quinteton on the Swell. It's the only 16-foot stop on the manuals. And it's also doubled on the pedal for the light, to have a light pedal sound. Okay, but it's actually a manual stop. But what I used was the Swell unison off, which turns off the octave level that it's actually at, and I have the Swell to Swell 4 turned on so it plays an octave higher, and you get this really lovely quintadina.
Yes, nice.
And so I have that set with the English horn because it kind of has a nice little ring to it.
That's beautiful.
And so then you have a little softer one, and then I start on number 3 with just straight strings. And then I'm going to pull this. And that's everything at the 8-foot level. And then number 4 adds some octave coupling, adds a 4-foot violina and some octave coupling, so you get a little bit more full string sound. And then number 5 adds some flutes with it to kind of fill it up a little bit. And then that's all of the stringy stuff. Then it's number 6 drops back to just flutes, 8 and 4. And then number 7 brings it up a little bit more. Number 8 is adds principals at 8 and 4-foot on the grate, but it has the Geigen diapason in there. So you kind of hear that kind of big, full, warm. And then number 9 is like my basic hymn setting. Then 10 add some reeds. And number 12 is the Gloria Patri. And so then you have your full, range of emotions going from soft to loud. And so I'm going to see if I think there's a way you can do something inside the organ to lock that memory level so that then it's just there all the time. And then whenever you come to play, you can just come and voila, there it all is. So if you have time to come set registrations for whatever event you're playing for, you can. If not, you can go to just memory bank number 1, and it will stay like that all the time. There's sometimes I need to use I was using on my memory level 40, I was using 1 and 2 for like prelude registrations and stuff to throw in there extra things. And so I do that occasionally now, but I go back, I save it in a different memory bank and then go back. I'm going to put 1 and 2, keep them the same way. So this memory bank stays pretty much the same all the time.
Now, I didn't look at the console. Do you have a forward back?
We do not have a forward back.
Yeah.
There is a slot in the combination action motherboard that has a spot for that, which I have thought at some point it would be really nice to get a quote on what it would cost to just get the card and put it in there and add the next. Peterson has 2 styles for this operating system. One is called American, where it just would be 1 through 12 in that memory bank, and that was all. I guess the next may go back to number 1, I don't know, or what they call European, where it'll click over to the next memory level up.
Yes.
So then you would have 1 through 12, and then if you hit next, it would go to number 1 of bank number 2, etc., like what it does at the River Center.
Right.
And on the organ at St. Thomas, that kind of thing. Right. It would do that, and so I would really kind of like it. That might be some little project I try to work on at some point, and then we could shift the toe studs over. That wouldn't make it too hard to get to. And then where 8 and 12 are, we could have the next and previous down here. But we'll just kind of see how that goes. At this point, we don't have it, though.
Well, if you're going to go to all that trouble, be sure and put a thumb stud also, so that if your feet have to be tied up, you can use your hands.
Yes, exactly. It's like, I play stuff that at some point near the end, I need to get to the full organ piston. And I know that we don't use them all the time, but having it way off over there in the outer 40 to have to stick your leg clear over or reach way up when you're in the middle of playing something. And it's like, okay, if I'm playing right in here, how's my thumb going to get over my pinky over, because it really needs to be like more here, more centrally located. So who knows?
Yeah. Give you another tool in your belt.
That's it.
Well, are you going to play some Pachelbel for us?
Oh, yes, I will. I'm sorry, I digressed. But here we go. Here's the canon in D a little bit with the lovely string, the big string setting. Now I'm going to move on a little bit farther over because I did this little thing the other day when we were recording for the service, because this is this week's prelude. But when I get over to this side where y'all, you know the next little section, when I get around to, let's see, I'll start here.
cymbal stern.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm going to toss that in there. But that's the strings. That's the strings. That's a little bit softer. Another thing that I like about the changes that we made is for Baroque music. You know, I have Verse Sundry 3. Here's a rival of the Queen of Sheba. It's a, you know, it's orchestral reduction, right? Because it's not really for organ. But I also have my, where did they go? My little Bach 8 little preludes and fugues too, you know, which we all know and love. I use these at weddings all the time. There's really happy, sweet, happy pieces. But, you know, the way I noticed with the configuration, the way everything was, finding a registration, a lot of times every manual sounded like every other manual, you know, and there wasn't a lot of color change, but having the 8, 4, and 2 on the grate, see, then there's a little bit of color change that we can get from the first time through, and then we can go to, let's see, I think I might have to do that. You know, whereas with the 2-foot over on the Swell, it was like the volume levels were so close, you really couldn't hardly tell that I made a manual change at all. You know, and it would work if you had something change a registration, push a piston. But you know, this music wasn't written with spaces to push pistons.
Yeah, because they had actually people doing that.
That's it, yeah. So it all just kind of has to roll along. Well, I have Miss Pam. Miss Pam does that for me sometimes.
That's awesome.
But you know, so it's nice to have it set so you can just move from manual to manual and get some texture changes. Here we go. I'll just play this whole thing.
do like the changes from manual to
Yeah.
manual. Makes it a lot more interesting to play.
It does.
too.
It does. There's a lot of different color options now that you can choose from that give you nice contrast from one thing to another.
I have to say this organ probably sounds better than I've ever heard it before.
Well, good.
It's
Good.
We're definitely moving it in the right direction.
Perfect. That's good to hear. That is good to hear.